Welcome to another episode of the Appiah Counselling Podcast. I'd like to begin with something many people wonder, especially when they find themselves stuck in the same patterns for years. Can you change the way you think? Perhaps you've caught yourself saying, "This is just the way I am," or "I've always been like this." What do you mean? Maybe you've even wondered whether your thoughts are so deeply rooted that changing them simply isn't possible. Well, let's explore that together. Take a moment and think about the route you usually take to work, or the order you get ready in the morning. Most of us have routines we hardly think about anymore. Our minds work in a very similar way. The more often we think something, the more familiar that pathway becomes. That doesn't necessarily make it true, it simply makes it familiar. Imagine someone who, for years, has believed they always let people down. Perhaps one mistake at work confirms it. A forgotten birthday confirms it. A cancelled plan confirms it. Yet all the times they were dependable barely register. Why is that? Because the mind is often looking for evidence to support the story it already believes. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Once we hold a belief, our minds naturally notice information that supports it more readily than information that challenges it. That doesn't mean we're being irrational, it means we're being human. That's the encouraging part. The brain isn't fixed. Neuroscientists use the term neuroplasticity to describe the brain's remarkable ability to adapt and form new neural pathways throughout life. Translation: your brain can learn new ways of thinking. That doesn't happen overnight though, it's not an overnight kind of thing. And it doesn't happen because we repeat positive affirmations that we don't really believe. Real change tends to begin with small moments of awareness. Picture someone who automatically thinks, "Oh, I'm going to fail." In the past, that thought would have gone unquestioned. Now, they pause. Not to force themselves into unrealistic optimism, but to ask, what evidence do I have? Or, on the other hand, has there ever been a time when things turned out better than I expected? That tiny pause is more powerful than it first appears. It's that moment a familiar pathway isn't followed automatically. Over time, those moments accumulate. Think of it like walking through a field. If everyone walks the same route every day, what happens? A clear path appears. Creating a new path takes effort at first. The grass is longer, the ground feels unfamiliar, but the more often it's used, the clearer it becomes. Our thinking often develops in much the same way. One thing I've noticed in counselling is that people sometimes become discouraged because their old thoughts still appear. They assume nothing has changed, but change isn't measured by whether an old thought appears or not. It's measured by what happens next. Years ago, you may have believed every self-critical thought. Today, perhaps you question it. Tomorrow, perhaps you let it pass without following it. That's progress. Not because the thought disappeared, but because your relationship with it changed. Aaron Beck, who we mentioned last time, whose work has really helped in the world of cognitive behavioral therapy, he showed that when people learn to examine their thinking with curiosity rather than certainty, emotional well-being often improves. Notice the word curiosity. Not judgment, not criticism, curiosity. Perhaps changing the way we think doesn't begin with replacing every negative thought. Perhaps it begins with becoming less certain that every thought is right. Here's something worth carrying with you. The first thought that enters your mind is often automatic. The second is where choice begins. I think that's an important distinction. As we come to the end of today's conversation, there's something I'd invite you to try this week. The next time you notice yourself thinking in a familiar way, don't ask, oh, how do I stop thinking this? Instead, you could maybe ask, is there another way of looking at this situation that I haven't considered yet? You don't have to force yourself to believe it. Just allow yourself to consider it. Sometimes that's where change quietly begins. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of yourself.